Okay, continuing last week's tutorial, and again, this is part of a series. There should be an annotation on the screen to the full playlist. Putting out a new Python 3 video every Wednesday. Last week we were working with while loops, and I didn't want the video to get too long, so I showed you some basics. But we're going to go back and learn a little bit more on what we were learning last week. So, last week we did this. We said x equals 0, and then we said while x is less than 10, and then we said print x, and then we said x equals x plus 1. And if I hit enter again, it's going to count 0 through 9. And again, because we said x is less than, while x is less than 10. So another option here would be to say equal to or greater than 10. So if we wanted to go from 0 and also display 10, besides changing this to 11 like we did last week, what we can say is while x is less than or equal to. So we got our less than symbol, or equal to 10. And then we'll say print x, and we'll say x equals x plus 1. We do that, and now, oh, I forgot to reset x. We'll say x equals 0, because we've changed the value of x, so it was already 10 when we started that loop. So now let's run that loop again, and we'll print that, and we'll add 1 to x each time. And there we go, we got 0 through 10. And again, if you wanted to show 1 through 10, you can either start x at 1, or you can switch the print and the actual changing of the value of x. But so I just showed you that. You could also do greater than, so we can do, last week we did greater than or less than, and we did equal to. So now we're doing equal to, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So you can do that. Now another thing that I want to show you, let's change x back to 0 here, and we'll do the same thing while x is less than or equal to 10. So it doesn't stop when it gets to 10. It goes to 10. It continues doing it as long as it's equal to or less than 10, either or. And then we'll say print x. And last week I mentioned that there was another way of doing this, and it's actually, this works. But you'll see in some code, and I want you to know this, one, so if you see it in other people's code, but two, it shortens it up a little bit, and usually programmers who have been programmed for a while don't do this. What they do is they'll say x plus equals 1. So instead of writing out, it saves you a little bit of like 1 or 2 characters, of typing. But it's just saying, this is saying the same thing as this. It's saying take x, and whatever x equals, add 1 to it. That's pretty much what it's saying. So we'll hit enter here again, and there we go. We get the same output. It's just a little bit shorter of a way to write that. And again, as I mentioned last week, when it comes to statements like this while loop, or when we get into if-then statements and stuff like that, the way it knows where the loop begins and ends is by indentations. That's why our prompt here has changed, because it knows you're within this loop. And then when you put in a blank line within the interpreter, it knows, without an indentation, it knows to end it and run it. But now we're going to look back. Last week we did within the interpreter, asking a question. But let's take that and actually put it into a script that actually displays some other outputs. So I'm going to hit Control-D to get out of the interpreter. I'm going to use Vim as my text editor, but as always, use whatever text editor you prefer. And I am going to type in, I'll give the name of my script, we'll call it my name, since that was the question we asked, .py. And again, the py isn't necessary, especially on Unix and Unix-like systems, but in Windows it makes it a lot easier, because that's how Windows determines file types, is by the extension. And so although it's not necessary, it's good to have that there. And same on the inside of the file here, our first line is our shebang line. In Windows just ignores this line, but when you're writing code, you definitely want to put this in there. It just makes life so much easier for so many users. They don't have to worry about what version of Python they should be using, because it says it right here in the line. It doesn't try to default to the Python 2 if you have this shebang line. All the user has to do is make the file executable, and it will know what interpreter to use based on that. Where if you didn't have that, you'd have to run it through Python manually, and you'd have to be sure to use the right version of Python. So here we go. We're creating our script. Let's create a variable. We'll call it answer, just like we did last week. And again, you can just make an empty string by doing that. We're saying answer equals nothing, but it is a string. We're just saying it to be a string. Okay, so now we're going to ask a question. And we're going to say while our variable answer, again, you can call it something else if you'd like, does not equal, and we'll give it the answer, and I'll say Chris. And again, this is case sensitive, and we'll get into adjusting that in a future tutorial most likely. So, because you never know what the user's going to input, and so you either need to limit what they're allowed to enter, or think of everything possible that they could answer. So, beyond the scope of this tutorial. So, we're going to say answer equals, and we'll say input, and we'll say what is my name, question mark, and I'm going to put a new line. I didn't put that in the last video, but I did it in the first video where we did input. \n means new line. I just think it looks better to ask a question and have the person answer on the next line when you're asking a question rather than asking to enter something. But that's just cosmetics on how I like it. So right now, answer equals nothing. It's a string, but it's blank. And then it's going to loop. And it's going to continue to loop until I'm sorry, a little brain cramp there. Until answer is not equal to Chris. Is that right? Let's see. and then we're going to say print welcome Chris. Or actually, it'd probably be better to say welcome, comma, answer. Okay, so now we'll save this, and we will make it executable. You only have to do this once. This is just giving this file permission to run as a program. And now I can say // and the name of the script. It's going to say, what is my name? I can say Bob. I can say, that's right. So I can say Tony, and then I can say Chris, and it says welcome Chris. So as soon as they get the correct answer, it lets them in. Again, originally I'm looking at my notes that I have here. I was going to do this as like a password example, which is something you never want to do in real life this way, because they'll just be able to look at the code and see the password. But if you're asking questions, that's something different. And so let's look at our code again here. What confused me earlier when I was looking at this, my mind was working on an if-then statement. I'm like, wait, if answer does not equal Chris, that doesn't make sense. But we're looping as long as it does not equal Chris. That's why I had that little moment of what's going on here. My mind was just on if-then statements, which we haven't gotten into yet. But again, we have our shebang line, which is very important, not necessary, but very important, especially if you want people to think of you as a good programmer, you want to do things proper. That's proper. Answer, we're saying it equal to an empty string. And then we're saying loop as long as answer does not equal Chris. So at any point it equals Chris, K-R-I-S, all lowercase. And it's got to be exactly that string. As long as it does not answer that, it's going to continue to ask, what is my name? What is my name? What is my name? And then at some point, you're going to type in the correct answer, which is Chris, and then it'll say welcome, and then whatever the value of answer is, which is Chris. So that's another look at what we did last week. It was kind of hard to do this in the interpreter to have some sort of output, so that's why I wanted to throw it into a script here. And real quick, before this tutorial gets too long, I'm going to go back into the Python interactive interpreter here, and I'm going to show you how to create an endless loop. So I'm going to say while, and you can say while equals 1, colon, And then I can say print hello. Now, if I was to run this right now as is, it's going to quickly just print hello continuously. Here, we'll do it. There, it's continuing to write that. Really, really fast. I'm going to hit Control-C to interrupt that. But another option would be, we'll say while 1 equals 1, and we can say print hello, or whatever you want. And then what we can do here is we can say input, and we can say press enter to continue. And what this is going to do, it's going to continue to loop forever, hello, but it doesn't loop until you hit enter. But now you'll see that we have this little 2 quotation marks there, and that's due to the input function outputting a string, and it's whatever the user enters. So we don't actually want to see that, especially if the user types something before hitting enter. It's going to echo that back out. So again, Control-C to break out of that loop right now. There's other ways to break out of loops we'll get into in the future. But again, we'll say while 1 equals 1. Another shorter way to do this that I normally do is just while equals 1, or while 1. You can actually do while 2, while 3. I think you can put any number in there because it's just saying 1 is 1. That's true, I guess. Okay, so we'll hit enter here. Again, we'll print hello. And you can have a bunch of things in here, printing, doing stuff. And then we'll say, before we did input, and we gave it a prompt of press enter to continue. And we got that string output, which we don't want. So we're just going to dump that into a variable we don't care about. I'm just going to put it in X. As long as you're not using X anywhere else in the program, that's fine to use, or whatever you want to call the variable. So now I'll hit enter, enter again around that hello, press enter to continue. And you see it doesn't give us those quotation marks now. If I type something, it doesn't matter. X now equals this here, this here, but it doesn't matter because we're not using that or looking at that. At least this is how I do it. I don't know if there's a better way to do this. There might be a module or something for press enter to continue, but I'm just using the input function. So I wanted to show you that, so let's review that real quick. You can say while 1 equals 1, or really any number, or you can just do while 1, colon. And then the way I do my press enter to continue is by using the input function and just dumping that into a variable that I'm not going to use. And again, at any point, Control-C to exit out of that, although we'll get into breaking out of while loops in the future. Anyway, for right now, I thank you for watching again. This is part of a series. There should be an annotation up on the screen. Again, if you have questions, down below is a comment section, which is great for comments. Questions should not go in the comment section. I mean, you can put them there, but there's a good chance they're not going to get answered, especially if they're technical questions that might take a lot to answer. Better place to ask that is to come to the IRC channel. If you go to my website, filmsbychris.com, that's Chris with the K. There should be a link in the description. Under social networking, there is a option for bring you to a web interface for the IRC channel. There is a great place to ask questions. But again, don't think you're going to get your question answered right away. You know, this isn't a help hotline. It's a community, a place where people come to chat and learn. If you do come in there, I recommend that you come in and stay logged in. Most of the regular people in there are logged in 24/7. They may not be at the computer all the time, but they're logged in. And we talk, we hang out, and we teach each other. So I hope to see you in there. I hope that you visit my site, and I hope that you have a great day.